Happy Easter. I have loved you. I have loved you. I have loved you with an everlasting love. So the prophet Jeremiah sang in the words of God to God's people, Israel. I have loved you with an everlasting love. That is the Easter message. It is the Easter message that is eternally proclaimed. It's full of joy, it's full of light, it's full of hope, and yet, I think that if we had been there right after those angels made this proclamation to Mary Magdala, of Magdala and the other Mary, and then Jesus met them and greeted them, and then told them to tell his closest followers that he had appeared to them and he would see them later in Galilee, back at home, I predict an argument would have broken out among his followers. I have reason to say this. Once Jesus was walking along on the way to Capernaum with his disciples, the same people that Mary went to make the announcement to, and Jesus heard them, and it didn't sound pretty. So when they got into the house at Capernaum, Jesus said to them, "What were you talking about as you walked along the way?" And they were shamefaced and looked at the ground because they had been arguing about who was greatest among them. Another time, two of his disciples, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, called the sons of thunder, came to Jesus in front of the others, the other 10, and said, "Jesus, we have a request for you." And Jesus says, "What is it?" And they said, "When you come into your kingdom, we would like to be seated at your right and at your left hand." Then Jesus had some sobering words for them. But the other 10 were quite angry because, well, was he going to give them that benefit and not to the rest of them? So I think that Jesus, in his resurrection, the most turning point moment in history, almost beyond history, in the resurrection, turning everything in the world upside down, announcing God's everlasting love to the world, but the fact that he announced it to two women, not any of the 12, I think that would have been a problem. I think that would have been met with more grumbling. Sad that the Easter message can be compromised that quickly like that, and maybe I'm wrong. But, what do you think, given your own experience of human nature and how we are? And it's a fair question, however, that's underneath that, which is, why them? Why did Jesus choose Mary Magdalene and the other Mary? And in John's gospel, there are two other characters who come very, very early to the tomb, before Mary is announced by Jesus to be resurrected. And they are Simon Peter and the beloved disciple. Why them? Why not the rest of them? What order is this? How does this happen? Well, one of my professors at the California Institute of Integral Studies, Brian Swim, once in a class that I was taking, said this. And he was talking about gravity. Essentially, he never used the word. He said, "The universe is full of desire." And if you ask me how I know that, I would say, he said, because I am too. The universe is full of desire, and I know that because I am too. And when Brian is talking about gravity, he uses the language of desire. That one body, be it your body or mine or a heavenly body or the earth itself, that it desires other bodies. And that desire between them, not gravity, but desire, is what pulls us together. Plato said that the first of all the gods, before any other god was made, in the Greek understanding was eros, desire. So I'd like to believe that the beloved disciple, Simon Peter, Mary Magdalene, that Jesus recognized their desire for Christ, for Jesus Christ, and that desire had led them already on a path of transformation. I know that because these were not their names. Mary Magdalene was simply Mary of Bethany for most of her life. She only becomes Mary Magdalene in the Gospel of John after her brother Lazarus has been raised from the dead. Then Mary Magdalene appears, and Magdalene is understood by some to be a title, meaning tower. Mary, the tower of God, of faith. We know that she was his greatest student. This is desire, to be a student, to be a learner. She sat at Jesus' feet, much to her sister Martha's irritation, who was busy with many things that you and I would be busy with. Jesus is coming to dinner. The disciples are coming to dinner. There's a lot to do. Mary stays at Jesus' feet because of desire. She wants to be transformed. She wants to know the everlasting love of God. Similarly, her brother, there is a deep strand of Christian understanding that says it is Lazarus who becomes the unnamed beloved disciple. Again, in the Gospel of John, it's the only gospel where the beloved disciple appears, and he only appears after Lazarus is raised from the dead. So he's transformed. He's transformed by this experience. But there's more to come. As one New Testament scholar has said, Lazarus was resuscitated. Jesus was resurrected. Meaning, Lazarus was given his old life back. He went back to Bethany. He went back. We have accounts in the gospel of him being at a dinner party after being raised from the dead. Think about that. Who was at dinner with you last night? Well, a guy who was dead for 4 days. And he was raised from the dead. And he had dinner with us. He resumed his old life again. He was resuscitated, surely changed. And the change is marked by the new name. He is beloved. Mary is the tower. He is beloved. And then there's Simon. Simon, the first one who, in answer to Jesus' question, who do people say that I am? And the disciples say, well, some people say you are John the Baptizer come back from the dead. And others say you are Elijah. And others say you are one of the prophets come back. And then Jesus looks at them and says, well, you've been hearing what everybody else is saying. What is it you say? And it's Simon who says, you are the Christ. You are the Christ, the Messiah of God. And Jesus names him Peter, the rock, at that moment. He's transformed. And it's his desire to be with Jesus, to understand who Jesus is as the heart of God, as the Son of God, that is the result in the new name. So there they are. 3 people who have been changed by their love of Jesus Christ. And the name is the sign of that love. So it seems to me that we have a picture of what the resurrection does. The resurrection is like the greatest object of gravity in the universe. It is love, and it is drawing all of the universe to itself. It is God's desire for you. It is God's desire for you. It's not just our desire for God. It is God's desire for you that is drawing us and transforming us. Finally, it is all God's love. Now, C.S. Lewis, in one of his works about what is the afterlife and what does the love of God do in our lives, has an analogy about this because it starts to answer the question of why these 3 and their desire, and why not me? Why not those other 10? Why not us? What's this order of precedence about? And in the afterlife, Napoleon, you would expect an English writer to pick a French for the bad role. I think it's predictable, but okay. So Napoleon is in the afterlife. He's not in heaven. He's not in hell. He's in that limbo, waiting to be transformed. And God keeps coming to him in Jesus Christ over and over again, through centuries of time, beyond time. And every time Napoleon feels Jesus getting close to him, feels everlasting love getting close to him, he moves 100,000 miles away. But, Lewis says, through an angel who is speaking in the book, he won't hold out forever. He won't hold out forever. God's love is everlasting. My fear, my anger, my shame, my disappointment, my oppression, all the things that make me not understand the everlasting love of God is not everlasting. It's finite. It will end. St. Paul says this. If there are prophecies, if there's all kinds of wisdom, if there's accomplishments, all of these will come to an end. So, in the end, love wins. Love will draw me. No matter how I have removed myself from the presence of love, love will draw me, and love will draw you. There's one more little gospel story. Jesus saw a great crowd of his followers, and they had been listening to him because they desired to know him and to love him. And it was evening, and they were in a lonely place, far from a town or a village or any kind of place where they could get food. And he saw them, and he had, the scripture says, compassion on them, for they were like sheep without a shepherd. They were lonely. They were tossed about by life. They were poor. And Jesus said, let's feed them. You know the story. But the end of the story is where we need to be today. In the end of the story, there's so much food left, so many plasma, so many fragments of bread, and they're all over the beautiful grass where these 5,000 people were seated. And Jesus tells his closest followers, collect all the fragments. Don't leave any of them left on the ground. Collect them all. Well, this was not a kind of cleanup motion at the end of the story. This was the conclusion of the story. That is, Jesus leaves no fragments. Napoleon will be brought in. Marc Andrus will be brought in. You will be brought in. Love never ends. Everything else will pass away. And this Easter message of love will bring us all together in Jesus Christ. And at that point, we will be given what is called our resurrection bodies. And the resurrection body is each other. It will be the totality of life in the beloved community that will shine with the everlasting love. No more barriers between you and me, between any of us, between us and the earth, and between us and God. I have loved you with an everlasting love.